Well, it's been quite a roller coaster a couple of weeks. So initially, there had been Nigel Farage claiming that he had been debunked by Coutts, and there was a lot of attention placed on it because he was claiming, it was an outrage and why had he been debunked?
I think this brings into question the whole of the board. The chairman of the NatWest group, the CEO of Coutts, the subsidiary. Frankly, because of how they behaved, I think they should all go.
And there was a bit of a mystery around this. And then the BBC, Simon Jack, reported that actually the reason why Nigel Farage had been debunked by Coutts, his firm, was because he'd fallen below the commercial threshold. He was no longer wealthy enough to be a client. And this was kind of reported and very much seized upon by a lot of media as complete gospel. Nigel Farage did what was called a subject access request, where he demanded from Coutts to know what they had on him. And actually what turned out was this huge dossier linking him to lots of his political views and thoughts, but also making quite disparaging remarks about him. And ever since that came out, really, it was a sort of a he said, she said, and clearly the BBC was incorrect in reporting as gospel the fact that it was solely commercial reasons. And only last week, it was that the Prime Minister stood next to Alison Rose, the Chief Executive of NatWest, and welcomed her to the Business Council. And so it's kind of, morphed and been a very dramatic unfolding of events for her to have resigned in the early hours of last night after admitting that she was the source of the story.
The most extraordinary thing was a statement from the board at 5:45 last night defending her position. Let's be clear about this. The first rule of banking is client confidentiality. And she, over a dinner, a sociable dinner with Simon Jack, the BBC business editor, clearly said some things that weren't very wise. The BBC were absolutely belt and braces on this, and that was confirmed by the CEO of BBC News in a letter to me. They then rang her up the next morning and said, "Are you okay with this information being published?" She said, yes. Simon Jack put it out. So you can't do that. You can't be in banking at any level, whether you're a cashier right through to being the boss of NatWest. You cannot breach confidentiality.
We had a statement from NatWest saying that the board had its confidence in Alison Rose and admitted that there had been an error of judgment in her making those statements. Alison Rose herself admitted that she was the source of the story, and she said, that it seemed like to deflect some of the portion of blame onto Coutts and how they had handled it, and saying that, repeating that she had been appalled by sort of that dossier on Farage, and saying that she had not been aware of that. So it was called into question, why she had given this information to the BBC's Simon Jack anyway. I think that the bank had thought that by her kind of doing a mea culpa, that would have been enough. But almost instantly, very few people were saying, you can't really say that there was an error of a judgment, admit that you were a source of a story about a banking client and hold on to your job. And at 1:29, so at about 11:30 last night, there was another board meeting at NatWest, hastily arranged to discuss, whether it was going to be a tenable position. And then Alison Rose's resignation was announced at 1:29 in the morning. There has also been, it's fair to say, that a correction of business attitudes, kind of particularly some of the more traditional elements in finance that was very exclusionary about women in the workforce. We still have a long way to go on that. But I think this point on the Coutts matter, it goes to show where a business sort of oversteps its reach in terms of trying to kind of tick too many ESG, environmental, social, and governance targets, and applying that to your clients. That seems to be where the line is going to be drawn.